Nice. I'm really pleased too that we're being joined by Richard Owens from Compassion Act. Richard lives in the far off distant land of Southport, and Compassion Act's work across that neck of the woods to support food banks and as different activities. So Richard, do you want to give us a welcome first of all? Do you want to give us a bit of an overview and a sense as to what Compassion Acts do?
Yeah, thanks, James. We 10 years ago started the Tussle Tuss Food Bank in Southport and Formby. They're one of the first groups of Tussle food banks. And then there was another charity formed locally to deal with debt issues, initially CAP Debt Centre, but then became Community Money Advice, which many of you will be familiar with. In 2019, 2020, it became obvious that we needed a name to communicate to the public, to those who were perhaps very reticent to approach us for food bank, probably pretty reticent to come to us for community money advice, to be honest, because all the evidence shows that people leave it very late to come for debt advice. And even a relatively small barrier, like the word money advice and the community aspect, that it sounds a little bit like not for me, was going to be a barrier. So we decided to call ourselves Compassion Acts, and we launched. Well, I think one of our beautiful sort of in our DNA is that we are ecumenical, but we're genuinely ecumenical rather than trying to be ecumenical, if you see what I mean. So it's hopefully it's not too forced. It is actually who we are. So it's always been from the beginning across the churches in the area, and I think that's one of our strengths now. It's lovely to be in this network, but we don't have to toe any party line and don't have to sit within a hierarchy or a structure. And I actually am a passionate ecumenist as well. Not that you go around saying that or wearing a badge of that, because that is a bit strange. But actually,
it'll be quite a long badge, wouldn't it? I am a passionate ecumenist. You'd need a long one for that.
It would. But what's nice is that as soon as someone, if you like, starts going into their little spiral of internal management speak for their bit of for their particular part of the Jesus crowd, we can say, okay, that's nice, but we've got a service to provide, So and that is not to diminish the impact that particularly our relationship with things like the Methodist Church, with the Elim Pentecostal Church, who have been a big part of our story. But yeah, now we run 5 food pantry sites, our own model. It's not a national model that we've bought into. We've got 6 food bank sites. We've got 4 warm spaces. We've got a town centre community hub, because we are experimenting that. We're a Pathfinder food bank, which is a Tussle Tuss sort of initiative, which allows us to experiment. We're trying to reach people in a different way. And we do the activities, the sort of things that have been spoken about, men's groups and IT courses and things, because on the basis that to try and intervene in the mental well-being poverty cycle, which we identified, frankly, long before the cost of living crisis, and it's not gone away, has it? Those longer term things that we know about the mental health and poverty cycle, and that there are points at which you can do something about that, but it works both ways. It goes clockwise and anti-clockwise, and that's not gone away because of the cost of living.
Yeah, right. Okay, so lots of us, when we think about Southport, we might think of leafy streets, suburbs, the posh bit of the region, but obviously that's not the full story of Southport. So how's the cost of living crisis impacted people in your community?
I think I concur with what's been said about it affecting everyone. Petri dish here of experimenting with building the coalition, the constituency for more empathy and more practical action, I suppose, being agents of empathy. And what I mean by that is, when I started the job 4 years ago, and you would speak to comfortable middle-class people in churches, and you spoke about food bank, they sort of gave a knowing nod and went, yes. Are there a lot of destitute people? Are there a lot of people living on park benches? Are there a lot of people, missing the point of anyone here who knows the percentages of people who come to food bank who are in work and so on, who pay mortgages and yeah. So there was what I'm saying is there was a massive disconnect between their understanding of what poverty might be and what it actually was. And the cost of living crisis possibly has done us a favor, has possibly been a gift. And what I mean by that is that might be quite shocking, but it's been a gift to us to be able to have a conversation now where no one thinks like that anymore. No one now thinks, puts an other badge on people who are struggling. I can't remember the last time now someone spoke to me in those terms, but it's not only relatively recently that people use those terms to describe, very nice people in churches use those terms to describe our service users. They didn't mean it in a bad way, I suppose, but it definitely was. It was a challenge to hear it like that. You don't get that so much now. Have we completed the journey? No. Is there a lot more to do? And could we have something to share with the rest of the city region and the diocese about this this challenge of building a constituency and building a sort of a bit of consistency? There's people. It's a little bit like when people survey and they say they want low taxes and excellent services, isn't it? It's a bit, they wanted two contradictory things. They wanted caritas, they wanted to be able to give charitably because it does something for them without looking into people's hearts. And I don't want to be in any way judgmental of people's giving behavior, but it certainly, there was something going on about the charity. But solidarity, that's a tougher journey. And some of this might be familiar to you as well in where you are, but certainly for us, solidarity was a tougher ask. It wasn't really ticking the boxes. Charity, yeah, would turn up with a big load of chocolate at Christmas. Spot on. And I was just reflecting the other day that maybe cost of living is giving us that opportunity because everyone knows someone in their family who is really struggling. And even people who appear off are worried about their heating bill. In terms of the actual people coming forward, we had the busiest week ever for Food Bank in the run up to Christmas. We are very busy with debt advice. So gone are those barriers where people were stopping, were holding themselves back from coming. They are now coming. Possibly a bit late. It would have been good to see them earlier in the process. Those of you around the table I can see who are involved in debt advice know that would have been better. And if we can find a strategy for bringing people into debt advice services earlier, that would be amazing. And that's part of this conversation, I think, that you're not other, it's you. Who needs this? You. The people in your church, the people on your PCC. Shocking, isn't it? The people in your PCC are in it together and are struggling through this cost of living crisis. That would have been a shocking statement to say that the people on your PCC are in need of services like this. That would have been quite a shocking thing in a couple of years ago, certainly in our neck of the woods. And I realise in some parts of the diocese that wouldn't be the same, but yeah. So I think there's a giftedness to it, but the pain of individuals who are coming to us who we can't do a lot more for, particularly on the fuel side. We are a fuel bank as well. We've reached the end of the road for a lot of those opportunities. I was interested to hear someone talk about coats. We've been quite blessed with the local council have a new coat scheme. So we were giving out vouchers for new coats. And there's something wonderful about a family receiving a new coat rather than a pre-loved coat. Even if it's only Primark or something, the joy in that and the fact that it gives respect and dignity was amazing. So I would say we do have we can sometimes have a go at our public sector partners, but actually they've got a good scheme going here in Sefton.
Nice, fantastic, Richard. Thank you, thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. I think the idea is the cost of living not as a gift as a whole thing, but that parts of it present themselves as a gift to us, particularly moving us from charity to solidarity is a really interesting thing for us to consider. You mentioned that you've opened a fuel bank and that some people have kind of reached the end of that. I just wonder if you could just speak really briefly a bit more about what that means.
Yeah, I mean, the National Fuel Bank setup has restricted its outputs. Our local council opportunity and some of the other agencies have reached into that, and that I think we've had to deal with a little bit of trauma amongst our volunteers and staff who we're used to being able to make some sort of with food, any of the food projects, we might have some boundaries and some categories and some 5 vouchers in a food bank, or come to the pantry for 12 months and don't take the mick, you can this that, and we can always stretch that and use our discretion. It's quite hard to be faced with a situation of fuel where there is no discretion. How can you do much more? The Salvation Army can top up your card. There's nothing more. And that's something internally we do a bit of work on, people's mental health, really. How do you say no to someone who says, well, I'm going home now and I won't be switching anything on? And we can do a little bit of discretion, but we do not have the resources and wouldn't have. So
it's a terrifying and brutal reality, isn't it? Next one. Richard, thank you so much for sharing with us. Really appreciate you giving up your time to talk us through some of that stuff tonight.